Welcome to DDL, where we discuss everyday topics like current events and/or controversial points of view. This is No, I'm Void. First things first, shout out to our sponsor, Candle Time. Head over to the link in the description to purchase a candle today.
Hey everybody, how's it going? So just for today's episode, let's go ahead and just look at some current news, what's going on in the U.S., a little bit around the world, since definitely some things have been changing around the world. And then I will give you my 2 cents on it, and hopefully it's not a, like, where are we going? Oh yeah, we need to do this and go here. Okay, so let's start with this one. Just using Yahoo News, just did a quick search, current events, what's going on kind of in the press. So this was written this morning, or Sunday morning. There's Elon, there's Mr. Trump, or President Trump. So the new populist president rallied against the judiciary as they block his aggressive moves to restructure his country's government and economy. This was in Mexico, where former President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador eventually pushed through changes that required every judge in his country to be elected rather than appointed. Reforms and the promise of more by his successor caused markets to lose confidence in his country's reliability as a place to invest, which led its currency to weaken. It was one in a series of assaults that populists around the globe have launched on the courts in recent years, and legal observers now wonder if the United States could be next. As the courts delivered a series of setbacks to his dramatic attempt to change the federal government without congressional approval, President Donald Trump's supporters are echoing some of the rhetoric and actions that elsewhere have preceded attacks on the judiciary. I wonder, it's interesting that they phrase it a dramatic attempt to change the federal government, and then they're saying without congressional approval. Now, if I'm not mistaken, all the issues that are being done in the courts right now don't require congressional approval to be done, because the Constitution already sets forth that the sole power lies in the executive, and the courts are actually overstepping their ability, or their sovereignty on what they can control. Yes, we have ways to limit each other. Each of the branch has checks and balances against each other. But when it comes to the operation of the executive branch, the judicial does not actually have any say over how the executive is ran. They're not supposed to interfere with that. And notoriously, the judiciary has always kind of interfered in some way, shape, or form, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, because it is checks and balances. It eventually will get worked out. But yeah, that's interesting that the framing of it, and then also adding in something that actually doesn't apply, is very interesting and kind of telling. Trump's deputy chief of staff, Stephen Miller, posted last week on X, honored the precedents now being established by radical rogue judges. A district court in Hawaii could enjoin troop movements in Iraq, which that's actually highlights exactly what I was trying to say right there, where the military solely falls under the executive branch. The executive cannot declare war. That is only can be done by Congress. But troop movements, deployments, all that stuff, all falls under the executive branch. Judiciary has no say in it whatsoever. And yeah, that highlights it very well, what he just said right there. So judges have no authority to administer the executive branch or to nullify the results of a national election. There you go. Which is interesting, though, because the Republicans tried to use the courts to nullify the 2020 election. So I'm not sure that line of argument makes much sense why you would say that, because if there is discrepancy, if there is fraud or anything like that, that is actually the function of the judiciary to handle. So that one I wouldn't agree with you, Mr. Miller. We either have a democracy, said Miller, who once ran a legal group that sued to get judges to block former President Joe Biden's initiatives, or not. Well, technically, Mr. Miller, we do not have a democracy. We have a republic. But I get what you're trying to say. Again, it's interesting that they add in that tidbit of information to bias the reader, but whatever. Trump supporters in Congress have raised the specter of impeaching judges who have ruled against the administration. Elon Musk, the billionaire Trump backer whose Department of Government Efficiency has ended up in the crosshairs of much of the litigation, has regularly called for removing judges on his social media site X. Again, that's not necessarily anything new. There's always been people that are calling for judges' removals, especially when the judges are not following the law, but are issuing orders or decisions based on their political beliefs, which unfortunately a lot of the Democrat-leaning judges tend to do, whereas the Republican judges tend to not. They tend to be much more impartial. Granted, everyone has bias, and it's hard for even judges to set those aside. So, yeah. On Sunday, the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Republican Chuck Grassley, reacted fiercely to Washington judge's order briefly halting deportations under the 18th century wartime law that Trump invoked hours earlier. Another day, another judge unilaterally deciding policy for the whole country, this time to benefit foreign gang members, Grassley wrote. If the Supreme Court or Congress doesn't fix, we're headed towards the constitutional crisis. And that is actually true, which is one reason why I wanted to bring this one up, is because infighting among the branches in the United States government is not new. However, since basically the deep state failed to get Hillary elected in 2016, the activist judges have been much more willing to blatantly disregard law and supersede their own authority to interfere and meddle with other branches, specifically when Donald Trump was in the executive or is in the executive. I don't see us moving to elected judges. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't believe the Constitution would even allow for that to happen, so there's no way that would get through unless there was amendment change. But the likelihood of that happening and getting 2/3 of the states to go along with it is slim to none. Let's see. Activists contend it's the administrations that's increasing the odds of a crisis. I would disagree. I would think it's the bureaucratic state interfering with the administration, actually doing their duty as the head of the executive branch. So, yeah, that's again, it goes back to framing, but it's whatever. They don't like what they're seeing in the courts, and this is setting up what may very well be a constitutional crisis about the independence of the judiciary, said Heidi Burich, founder of the Global Project Against Hate and Extremism. I don't like that framing that she says. They don't like what they're seeing in the courts, and it's setting up. Is it that they don't like what they're seeing in the courts, or are they seeing that the courts are abusing their constitutional powers and interfering with in a different branch of the government? Right? It's all about framing. But yeah, that's interesting. Despite the rhetoric, the Trump administration has so far not openly defied a court order, and the dozens of cases filed against its actions have followed a regular legal course. His administration has made no moves to seek removal of justices or push judicial reforms through the Republican-controlled Congress. And I don't think he will. As much talk as there is about Trump being an extremist and far right and a Nazi and Hitler reincarnated, all that talk, he's not a dictator. I remember the Summer of Love 2020, the BML riots, everything. There was a large push for people saying that he needs to invoke the Insurrection Act because the violence, the rioting, the looting, the death that occurred on American soil, and the inability of Democrat-controlled areas to stem the problem actually did give rise to, it would have given enough of a reason for him to invoke it and bring in military action to calm the unrest. However, he chose not to do that. Now, if he was an authoritarian like they claimed, he would have done that. So it's just very interesting, very telling. People aren't deep level thinkers. They don't think along a lot of this stuff. They tend to read headlines and kind of just get their information from headlines, which is why the left wing's so good at mobilizing people. Is they lie in the headlines, and then as you read it, you kind of get the truth a little bit. And if you're really good, you start reading different articles about the same topic written by different sources, and eventually you'll end up seeing the common threads, which is typically what actually happened. Like this is just someone's opinion that they think this could happen. They're using sources of people that believe it could happen just to make it appear that it is happening, but it's not. I mean, they even just said it right here. There's been no moves to seek removal of justices or push judicial reforms through the Republican-controlled Congress. So then they themselves are admitting that there's no actions being done right now. They're just fear-mongering. Justin Levitt, a law professor at Loyola Marymount University and voting rights expert who previously served in the Justice Department's Civil Rights Division, said he's no fan of Trump's moves, but he said the administration has been following legal norms by appealing decisions it doesn't like. Completely normal. So even a person who doesn't like Trump or what Trump's doing is saying that they're following the legal norms. So what is this article really trying to impart other than fear-mongering? I think most of this is bluster, said Levitt. Nothing, noting courts can imprison those who don't obey orders or levy crippling fines that double daily. If this is the approach the executive wants to take, it's going to provoke a fight. Not everybody is going to be content to be a doorway or doormat the way Congress is. That's true. Congress is a doormat. They basically gave up all of their power in order to keep themselves being reelected. They're pretty feckless. Even if no firm moves are underway to remove judges or blatantly ignore their rulings, the rhetoric is not going to notice within the judiciary. Oh my God! So because people speak and have thoughts, that's cause for concern. That's kind of what I'm reading here. Dumb. 2 Republican-appointed senior judges last week warned about the rising danger of the judiciary being targeted. You guys are not being targeted. Threats against judges are threats against constitutional government, except when those threats come from the left. You know, when Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, all those were getting attacked by the left. Then there was no legal recourse. That was completely acceptable. It is the way you express yourself. The double standards are insane. Targeting judges is, or I should say, is an authoritarian instinct. Again, they're trying to. You can't make this one take, guys. You just can't. It's pathetic. So let's be done with that one. So let's see. Let's move on. Ecuador pitches U.S. military base and free trade deal to Trump allies. Sources say. Don't know who these guys are. Let's see. That doesn't give anybody who these guys are. Interesting. Ecuadorian officials have told allies of U.S. President Donald Trump that they are interested in hosting a U.S. military base in the South American country, according to 2 sources with direct knowledge of the matter. The officials also said that they were interested in inking a free trade deal with the United States, which has eluded the Andean nation, even as neighboring Colombia and Peru have had bilateral accords with the U.S. for over a decade, says the sources who requested anonymity despite private conversations. The expressions of interest were delivered in recent weeks to Republican lobbyists in Washington close to Trump's administration, the sources said. It is unclear if the administration is itself aware of the interested in the proposals or interested in the proposals, and the White House and National Security Council did not respond to the request for comment. The military base pitch is the latest unconventional plan advanced by the administration of Ecuadorian President Daniel Nuba. I'm assuming that's him. Who is trying to tamp down on crime and strengthen ties with Trump associates heading into a competitive April election. On Wednesday, Nuba announced a strategic alliance with Eric Prince, a prominent Trump supporter and founder of controversial private military firm Blackwater, to take on crime and narco-terrorism in the country of 17 million. Norba, the 37-year-old heir to one of the country's biggest business fortunes, has publicly argued for bringing foreign military bases to Ecuador. The Ecuadorian legislator is in the early stages of legislative process that could eliminate a constitutional ban on such facilities instituted in 2008 with the support of the leftist former President Rafael Correa. The U.S. government had a military base on the environmentally sensitive Guadalupe Islands during World War II, and a separate base used largely to combat narcotic trafficking in the mainland until 2009, at which point Correa forced Washington to abandon the outpost. Several small and medium-sized nations have been exploring unconventional ways to build ties with Washington, some of which appear designed to take advantage of Trump's transactional foreign policy impulses and willingness to entertain unconventional policy ideas. Officials in the Democratic Republic of Congo, for instance, have traveled to Washington in recent weeks to pitch the Trump administration on a critical minerals deal between the two nations. Officials in El Salvador, governed by conservative President Nayib Bukele, a prominent Trump ally, have offered to host criminals deported from the U.S. in Salvadorian jails. Ecuador's government recently selected Washington-based Mercury Public Affairs to represent its interests with the Trump administration, according to Monday's filing in the Justice Department division that oversees foreign lobbying efforts. Interesting. The filing outlined the lobbying contract does not include any reference to military base, but it does identify migration, trade, and security issues, including anti-terrorism efforts, as potential areas for collaboration. That actually makes a lot of sense. Why wouldn't you? Why would a? Yeah, that makes sense. They did not respond to requests for comment. Ecuador is heading into a tight April 13th runoff election that will pit Noba against leftist Luisa Gonzalez, a protege of Carrera. Noba has campaigned on what he says has been a 15% cut in violent deaths last year, a reduction in the prison violence, and the capture of major gang leaders. He has vowed to keep deploying the military on the streets and in prisons to fight insecurity. His administration is also seeking to develop strategies alongside the State Department of Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs to fight narco-terrorism. According to the Monday filing with the Justice Department, Gonzalez, 47, has expressed opposition to the presence of foreign troops in Ecuador, while calling for more efforts to fight the drug trade-related crime that has rocked the country in recent years. She has pledged to pursue corrupt judges and prosecutors and roll out special spending or social spending plan in the most violent areas. Why is it that the left always wants to spend other people's money? I don't get that. Why are you going to steal from other people to give it to other people? That makes no sense. Why not cut crime, increase peaceful areas, and give people a chance to earn money? That makes way more sense to me. But whatever. One of the sources familiar with the Ecuadorians' interactions with Republican lobbyists said that they were likely asking for too many deliverables in too short a time. The State Department tends to limit bilateral agreement directly before elections so as not to appear in supporting a particular party, the source noted. Trump has pledged to fight narcotics trafficking in Latin America, and he has at times expressed an interest in expanding U.S. hard power. He has, for instance, threatened to invade Panama, acquiring Greenland, and said that the U.S. could effectively take over Gaza. Oh, my God. In one of the other articles, you'll see that he has a very good way, very prominent way of exaggerating what he actually thinks. But his administration's engagement with Latin America has not always followed an obvious pattern. He has repeatedly threatened to slap 25 across-the-board tariffs on Mexico, which partially took effect in earlier March, amid dissatisfaction with the country's attempt to combat fentanyl trafficking, while at the same time complimenting Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum. His administration has made a deportation deal with Venezuela, a regional foe, but also declined to renew Chevron's license to operate there, a move which has further isolated the nation's economy, economically. Interesting. Moving on. Here you go. I told you we were going to get into it. Trump says he was being a bit sarcastic when he promised to end the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours. I honestly didn't. When he said that, I knew exactly what Trump was doing. Like I said, everything Trump says, I take with a major grain of salt. Is his plan to help end the war in Ukraine and Russia, or between Ukraine and Russia? 100%. Is it going to be done in 24 hours? No, I didn't even think that was feasible. He was being his boisterous self. The man has an ego the size of freaking the United States itself. Of course he's going to say something stupid like that. So it's interesting. It's still in the news, but like I said, most people aren't deep level thinkers. President Donald Trump said Friday that he was being a little bit sarcastic when he repeatedly claimed as a candidate that he would have the Russia-Ukraine war solved within 24 hours, and even before he even took office. Trump was asked about the vow he repeatedly made on the campaign trail during the interview for the Full Measure television program he had, as his administration is still trying to broker a solution 54 days into his second term. Well, I was being a little bit sarcastic when I said that, Trump said in a clip released ahead of the episode airing Sunday. What I really mean is I'd like to get it settled, and I think I'll be successful. It was a rare admission from Trump, who has a long record of making exaggerated claims. Duh. The dude's ego is huge. Like, how is this newsworthy? Like, everyone on the planet should recognize this. Should recognize it. I understand that there's a lot of Trump derangement syndrome out there who think that whatever Trump says is gold. And when I say Trump derangement syndrome, I'm talking for the people that are like, the dude can do no wrong. He walks on water. And I'm also talking about the libtards that just sit there and think that everything he says is like an authoritarian Hitler coming to take over the world. I mean, these two groups of people, I don't understand how you cannot understand who this person is. He is a mid-90s Democrat. He's a rich man from New York. He has the ego the size of the United States, if not larger. It might even be the world. The dude exaggerates. 100% exaggerates. If you think he's being serious or is actually meaning 24 hours, it's 24 hours. You really need to take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, do you really believe that? And if you really believe that, what is wrong with you? If you don't believe that, congratulations. You probably are a high-level thinker and seeing that, hey, I understand what he's trying to get at, and I recognize that he's just being boastful, right? So, Trump said on a CNN town hall in May of 2023, I watched that one. I still remember it. And I couldn't believe his response to this word or this sentence right here that he said, I want them to stop dying. When he said that, I was like, yeah, he's going to win the election. When he said that, I knew in 2024 he was going to win. They're dying, Russians and Ukrainians. I want them to stop dying, and I'll have that done. I'll have that done in 24 hours. What he's really meaning is they're dying, Russians and Ukrainians. I want them to stop dying, and I'll have that done. Where I've learned Trump likes to go is he can't just say the thing. He has to then go and inflate and rub his own ego. I'll have that done in 24 hours. Ain't no way you were going to have that done in 24 hours. When he said that, I knew that was a lie back then. But as soon as I heard him say this, I knew he was going to win. That one line right there back in 2023. I remember watching that town hall. I remember him getting asked that question. I remember the answer he gave, and I remember this specific one in particular, and I thought to myself, he's going to win. He is going to win. So that is the war that's dying to be settled. I'll get it settled before I even become president, Trump said during a September debate with then Vice President Kamala Harris. If I win when I'm president-elect, and what I'll do is I'll speak to one, I'll speak to the other, I'll get them together. Now, as far as I know, when he was president-elect, I did not hear any reporting that he met with Putin or Zelensky. What I have seen since he's become president, Putin is a little bit more amicable to come to the table. Zelensky seems to be a little bit more playing hardball, and I don't understand his positioning to think that he can't even play hardball. He's not in a position really to play it. So, you know, the Republican repeated the claim frequently on the campaign trail. That he did. His special envoy, Steve Witkoff, was in Moscow this week for talks on the U.S. proposed ceasefire, which Ukraine has accepted. In the interview, Trump was also asked what the plan would be if Putin does not agree to a ceasefire to the war he started 3 years ago. Bad news for the world because so many people are dying, Trump said. But I think he's going to agree. I really do. I think I know him pretty well, and I think he's going to agree. I don't know. I know one thing Trump does is he tries not to bash or belittle those people that he's working on deals with, which I know drives the Democrats and the Liberal Party, the Liberals, very that drives them crazy, makes them pretty upset because they want to hound him, they want to call him this dictator, they want to throw all the names at him and stuff. I don't necessarily know if I agree with Trump. I really don't, just because I don't know if Putin is going to want to appear weak. And by agreeing to a ceasefire without having an agreement in place may give the appearance of him looking weak and submitting to the United States requests. And I don't know if he's going to want to do that. But we'll see. We'll find out. Oh, let's see. Which one's this? The whole pie. Trump team attempts novel legal strategy to subvert birthright citizenship. Interesting. He holds up an executive order that renames a wildlife sanctuary in honor of the late Jocelyn Nungunnery, a 12-year-old girl who was allegedly murdered by two undocumented. Allegedly. I thought this was already settled, was it not? I thought they pleaded guilty. Or am I thinking of a different case? I don't know. Interesting. I'm going to have to follow that up. So Trump administration is asking the Supreme Court to curtail a lower court's ability to issue a national injunction, hatching a novel legal strategy in its bid to radically revise a bedrock American principle, birthright citizenship. Now, this one, there's two theories of thought on the birthright citizenship, and I actually am in the agreement that common law established birthright citizenship. So don't get me twisted thinking that I don't think birthright citizenship isn't a thing. I actually agree with the theory that the United States judiciary law stems from England's common law practice, which does grant that anyone born in the sovereign country is actually a citizen of that country. But there is another argument that I think holds water. I just don't personally agree with, which is saying that there was a portion in one of the amendments that actually talks about that is subject to the jurisdiction of the land, and that's where this kind of that argument I think carries water. I just don't know if that's actually what was meant. I'm not 100% sure. So let's keep reading. Instead of asking the Supreme Court to directly rule on the constitutionality of granting U.S.-born children automatic citizenship, the Department of Justice requested this week that lower courts be barred from blocking Trump's executive order limiting birthright citizenship on a national scale. So far, 3 federal judges have issued overlapping injunctions to block Trump's executive order, which aims to keep the children of visa holders and undocumented immigrants from being American by birth. And that's actually where his executive order stems from, is what I was talking about with the jurisdiction. Are they subject to the laws? If you're here illegally, you're not technically a citizen. You're not subject to the country's jurisdiction. It's an interesting argument. I just don't know if it holds water. I think it holds water. I don't know if it holds enough water. But we'll see. In a March 13th filing to the Supreme Court, the Trump administration said that in an ideal world, the existing injunctions would apply only to the individuals who sued the federal government in a personal capacity. But they're also open to the court blocking the order on a more limited scale. For example, limiting the injunctions to the states and organizations that have participated in the lawsuits alongside the individuals. They're giving the court 5 or 6 different ways to help them, but they are asking for the whole pie and they're settled for whatever they can get, said Brian Green, a Colorado-based immigration attorney. Interesting. I don't agree with that. It kind of ties back into the first one we talked about where the judicial or the judge in Hawaii can intervene in troop movements in Iraq or whatever. Assistant Professor Haiwen Damonfung at Cardozo School of Law told the Miami Herald that the Trump administration might be banking on some Supreme Court justices having previously signaled skepticism about the validity of nationwide injunctions as a remedy in general. And that actually is good because nationwide injunctions should not be done on lower courts. That should have to go to the Supreme Court. She said it would be an odd result if the Supreme Court allowed the Trump administration to apply a potentially unconstitutional executive order. Apply a potentially unconstitutional executive order to some people and not others. Sorry, I had to pause here because they threw that in there. And it kind of drives me a little bit bonkers because they are this word is going to get ignored by most and they're going to see unconstitutional. And it's not unconstitutional for the Trump administration to exercise an executive order for how they believe that they are supposed to be executing the laws of the land. That is their role. But adding the word potentially kind of gives them cover for it. It's just most like me. I didn't even when I was reading it, I was actually stopping because I thought I read that and then I had to pause and look back at that. Federal Judge John a Reagan appointee who has issued one of the nationwide injunctions out of Seattle, described the executive order as blatantly unconstitutional. Well, I would agree with you insofar as it's blatant, but I don't necessarily know if it's unconstitutional. Just because I have an agreement that common law supersedes the 14th Amendment, I believe was one they're talking about. That doesn't necessarily mean it is blatantly unconstitutional. That's one thing we need to get settled in the United States. I hope it does get settled because the argument should be done. But nationwide injunctions are court orders that block the federal government from enforcing policies across the entire country, not just for the individuals who sue. The Trump administration argues that these injunctions amount to judicial overreach, preventing the executive branch from implementing its policies. That's actually facts. It's a good argument to have. Universal injunctions compromise the executive branch's ability to carry out its functions. Justice Department Attorney Sarah Harris wrote in an application to the Supreme Court characterizing the nationwide blocks as having reached epidemic proportions since Trump returned to the presidency. That's actually facts too. Left-wing activist judges from the left wing that do not like Trump's policy agenda are abusing their power and in interfering. That's what we read in the first one. That's what we're reading now. Does that mean that Trump's going to get rid of them and go to elections or anything like that? No, that was fear mongering. You can kind of see how the left wing mainstream media is trying to already set the tone for what's going on, but it's not really what's actually going on. They just don't like the fact that they're losing power and have been losing power. Put simply, the Trump administration wants the nation's highest court, which Trump has an outsized impact in shaping. To put simply, the Trump administration wants the nation's highest court, and then they had to throw this in here, which Trump has had an outsized impact on shaping. So they're basically already saying that if oh my God, these guys are good. They're already saying that if the Supreme Court sides with Trump, it's because Trump had 3 picks put on the bench for the Supreme Court. Wow. Okay. So to weigh in on a cornerstone tenet of U.S. immigration policies. I wouldn't say it's a cornerstone tenet of our immigration policies. It is definitely a cornerstone tenet of what most Americans think. But I think that's again, done through the shaping of us stemming from breaking off from Great Britain, but adopting their common law practices. So I don't disagree with what they're trying to say, because I actually think they're right, but they're framing it in such a way that it makes me want to disagree with them, for the simple fact that they're almost lying. Critics, however, maintain that these injunctions are necessary to prevent unconstitutional actions from taking effect nationwide. See, this is the problem. The Constitution is written in a way that gives the laws of the land, right? But it sets forth the powers on into each branch as to what they can do. So the executive branch is empowered by the Constitution to enact, safeguard, to execute the laws of the land for security of the nation, and to execute the laws that Congress writes. The judiciary is supposed to work on settling disagreements. However, a disagreement from California or Seattle or, a left-wing area against a Republican president should not affect the nation. It should not be able to stop the administration from doing their job. And that's what the administration's DOJ is arguing to the Supreme Court. I actually agree with Trump's administration on this one. I wouldn't like it if the Democrats were in power and Republican judges were doing that. Granted, it's highly unlikely they would do that, because typically most Republicans play fair or play by the rule book, whereas most left-wing judges tend to be activist judges or pushing through their own agendas or their own party's agenda. So I'm not disagreeing with Trump on this. In his argument back, I am disagreeing that his executive order makes any sense. The one good thing I think that we will get out of his executive order is I don't think this article is right, where they're trying to already bias you against the Supreme Court. I think the Supreme Court's going to come along on the side of the common law thought process. That's personally my thought. However, I very well could be wrong on that, mainly because if you look at I believe it's the 14th Amendment that actually is the one that's in question here. The way it's written does have that one section in there, which I said can carry water. And depending on how the debates and the transcripts from Congress for when that amendment was adopted, I haven't looked that heavily into it. I actually want to say I should. But depending on how that goes, it might sway some of the judges to go the opposite way and back Trump on this one. I just don't see it happening, especially when one of the aspects that the judges will take into account is the unrest that their ruling will make. They won't, obviously, if it violates the Constitution, they have to go and say that. However, if it's muddied enough and they know that the common or the prevalence thought is birthright citizenship is a thing, then they'll follow through with that one. So, yeah, that's my understanding. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a legal expert, but that's my understanding from all the research and stuff I've done. Should the Supreme Court rule in favor of Trump, that could weaken lower courts' ability to block executive actions and a range of other future policies on healthcare, the environment, or antitrust issues, and dramatically reshape the balance of power between the judiciary and the executive branch. It's not reshaping it. It's actually, if the Supreme Court picks this one up and actually takes this argument into play, not the birthright citizenship, but whether or not a district judge can put an injunction for the entire nation. If you were to look at the Constitution the way it's written, judicial power definitely is being being abused in this regard. So it does make sense that the Supreme Court would side with the Trump administration on this. But it's not reshaping it; it's actually correcting it. So again, it's framing. It could be reimagining the court's authority in a service of the robustly powerful executive branch. Actually, the executive branch is pretty feckless right now. The judiciary has, over the last, probably probably since Truman, has actually been eroding the powers of the executive branch. Maybe not Truman. Maybe, I'd say Truman. Since about Truman. So yeah. Okay, let's move on. We covered the death out of that one. Cinnamon calls out Ocasio-Cortez, other Dems over sudden change of heart on filibuster. All I can think of is Alex Stein primetime grind. Alex Stein primetime with his freaking cat calling AOC on, was it at the steps of the Capitol? If you don't know what I'm talking about, just go look at it. Just go look up Alex Stein's AOC interaction. It's hilarious. Former Senator Kristen Sinema, independent of Arizona, which, yeah, that was. I'm trying to remember. She was a Democrat, and then she switched to independent because the Democrats were going crazy. She still has a lot of Democrat viewpoints, but she also is pretty getting a little bit more balanced, I think. So anyway, she had a heated exchange with Rep. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, a Democrat out of New York, and other Democratic Party members who she said switched their stance on support of the filibuster in the upper chamber. Change of heart on the filibuster, I see, Sinema wrote on social media with a screenshot of the post from Ocasio-Cortez shaming the Arizona lawmaker for not supporting ending the filibuster in order to pass Roe v. Wade protections. Sinema comments... come as Democrats urge their counterparts to use a filibuster to prevent the House GOP-led government spending bill from advancing. It is very interesting. Democrats are all for packing the court when they don't have the majority on the court. They're all for blocking the filibuster when the filibuster can be used against them. But they want all of these things when they have it, the power to use them. But if you have the power to use them, then they don't want you to have it. It's very interesting, very telling. And shout out to Sinema for actually calling her out. This is one reason I did like the fact that she was switched over to independent. She was one of the better Democrats, I thought, and now that she's an independent, she actually, I think, should be used a little bit more in the government. Unfortunately, I think she lost her bid or race. So circumventing the filibuster requires the Senate to obtain 60 votes to approve legislation, but some Democrats in the past have argued the strategy, which is often used to delay votes, should be abolished. However, many are calling for its use this week to avoid cuts to health care and future or research featured in the continuing resolution. Ocasio-Cortez said that she felt a deep sense of outrage and betrayal over Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's decision to vote in favor of the bill. Actually, I don't say a lot of good things about Schumer because I don't like the guy, but his change in stance actually showed me that he actually is not necessarily that bad of a guy. He's just a politician. He's going to go with the winds blowing. So he thought the left progressive wing was the way to go. So he was being very obstinate in as his role as majority leader in the Senate. But now that he's minority leader and he sees how the American people's will actually is going, he's actually being a fairly decent politician. But, it's neither here nor there. Still don't like the guy. When pressed for changing her stance on the filibuster by Sinema, the New York representative defended her views, claiming Democrats don't use the filibuster when it's warranted. What? Still no. In fact, the same Dems who argued to keep the filibuster when we need it do not, in fact, use it when we need it. What? In fact, the same Dems who argue to keep the filibuster for when we need it do not, in fact, use it when we need it. So I get what she's trying to say, but that's not what Sinema was calling her out for. AOC wanted to get rid of the filibuster. So if you wanted to get, it's kind of like the same thing like freedom of speech. Like, who says it? If you believe in free speech and you get canceled, there's somebody who says it that they'll stand with you to fight for your right for free speech. But if you agree with canceling people and you get canceled, they're not going to stand with you because you only care about the power for yourself, right? And that's kind of the same thing that I'm getting off of AOC right here. It's only used to block Dems policies, never to block harmful GOP ones. Could have proved us wrong. Instead, they proved the point. No, There's been plenty of times you guys have filibustered GOP stuff. But okay. Cinema still argued some showed a change of heart during votes this week. Literally 0 Senate Democrats support the filibuster. 38 voted to filibuster the continuing resolution yesterday. 8 who previously voted to eliminate the filibuster did not filibuster. 1 who previously campaigned against the filibuster did not filibuster. That's true. It was also followed by sarcastic post targeting Rep. ArKaNi. Actually, ArKaNi is not that bad of a Democrat. Popular take from the left: if you had eliminated the filibuster and voted for everything that the left wanted, the threat of the filibuster being used by ours would have happened, but happened because D's would win every election and have a permanent majority, Cinema wrote. Interesting. What a breathly undemocratic take. Cinema's posts are another sign of fracture in the Democratic Party approaching the legislative measures. Cinema's no longer part of the Democratic Party. You guys lost her because you guys don't have a solid plan. And the work that you have been doing has been just utterly... The last 4 years under the Biden administration proved that point. If the Democrats continue the route that they're going, giving into the far left progressive side of theirs, there's not going to be a Democratic Party to really follow. The policies from the far left are nothing short of a
fatality.
Plain and simple, guys. You cannot take the minority positions, try to mainstream them and cram them down everyone's throat. Everyone eventually is going to get sick and tired of it and eventually move past it. That's my help to the Democratic Party. I don't believe that the Democrats should go away. I think the current version of the Democratic Party needs to go away, but they need to take a lot of look inside themselves and start questioning some moves. I'm not a fan of Gavin Newsom, but he's going on. Who was it? Joe Rogan? He was on with Joe Rogan, asking Joe Rogan what he needs to do. And all of it is really just a setup. He's just being the good politician he is. I mean, he's a skilled politician, but his far left policies are one of the reasons California sucks so much right now. And to bring those nationwide is not going to be healthy for the nation. Our nation is already fracturing. And it's fracturing because you have two very different political beliefs in the United States right now. And it's easily defined between the left and the right. The left is the wokeness, the gender ideologies, the using authoritarian measures to bolster the elite and force others to do what you want, the left wants them to do. And the right is everyone else. That is your independents, that's your liberals, that's your constitutionalists, that's your Republicans, that's your far right extremists, it's everyone else. I am not a Republican, yet I'm considered a Republican by most people I know because I don't agree with the left, which is not. Everyone thinks I'm a Trump fan. And if you guys have watched this long enough, you will know I am not a Trump fan. There's some things I like about Trump. There's some things I hate about Trump. I have that with everyone. On a balance, Trump is a positive. I will admit that. On a balance, Trump is a positive. I would never vote for Kamala Harris. I would never vote for Hillary. Kamala Harris, sorry. She kept prisoners locked up in prison for free labor, free to cheap labor for Californians. Hillary laughed at our servicemen and women dying. Sorry. Those are two major things. I know they're single points that I'm expressing, but there's more to each one of them. Their characters I do not trust. Do I trust Donald Trump? No. However, Donald Trump at least has reverence for our troops. He at least wants to treat everyone equitably, or at least appears to treat everyone equitably. And I know everyone's going to push back. Oh no, he's racist, or no, he's that. He's that. We know, whatever. I'm sick of those arguments. The simple fact is, there has to be a mixture of the two. And when you're in a choice between the lesser of two evils, sure, there's sometimes like, was it 2016? I voted third party. I wasn't going to vote for Trump. I wasn't going to vote for Hillary. One is I didn't like Hillary at all. Two is I was like, Trump's not really telling me anything that makes me think he's any different than, any of the other Republicans. But then after his 4 years, I was like, okay, he's not bad. I live in Idaho. I'm granted the luxury of not having to vote for Trump and still getting the benefit of Trump, but it's just frustrating, the level of hate from the left that Trump instills, but it's also equally annoying the level of love that his diehard fans from the right give him. Because yes, the dude is human. He's going to make mistakes. He does some dumb things. The ICE stuff with the immigration, I'm not particularly proud of. The tariffs, I think he's doing okay. I think he might be going a little aggressive on that. The war with Ukraine, I wish would already be done, but it's that's complex and way out above my pay grade. So I think the biggest thing that we need to get to as Americans is to have a more nuanced conversation and not just arguing for the sake of arguing, and especially keeping your feelings out as much as you can. Yes, feelings play a role in helping you determine what's morally good and what's morally acceptable, all that fun jazz. Yes, in any debate, any argument, there's going to be a little bit of emotion. However, when you let your emotion dictate whether or not something can be done or not done because of your personal beliefs, then you have failed the argument. You failed the debate. But yeah, I'll let that one go. Till next time, guys.
Thank you for watching. Till next time.
Peace.